I thought it was kind of interesting, catching in the movie that the person who invited the Hindu to pray was very agreed to his LDS. That was just kind of an interesting thing, and I think he has a perspective that maybe others don't. But I noticed on the front here it says a quote from Richard Brown, who was a Civil Baptist Convention gentleman you interviewed towards the end of the film. Every good Christian should see this film. I'm just curious to know, once those who you interviewed or other Christians who have seen the film, it seems what Joseph said earlier is true. It's easy to label Mormons a cult, and then we can mistreat them as a result of that. And it seems this film kind of removed that label to some extent. And it would seem to me for some it would be very uncomfortable for them to watch it because it does remove that label, it makes them human. And as a result, they can't feel comfortable now. So what was their reaction in watching it? Did they sense this confliction like you just described? Was it hard for them to watch that?
So there was a version of this film a few years ago that we released and screened to evangelical Christians around the country. And of course, responses varied, but one of the things we got across the board was heartfelt apologies. I mean, singing hymns after the screening. I mean, I think you're correct that it does break down those labels, and I think we saw that, and certainly in the friendships we've gathered and the people that we met in the process, it's obliterated that label for them, I believe. I mean, I don't know, maybe they would still talk about Mormons as a cult, but not in our interactions,
right? John, I think John could give us a response on that, probably. What's going on? And respond to that question from the insider as well.
Yeah. Well, you may have seen that there's a minor controversy going on right now as a result of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, where Billy Graham, who no longer heads it, is now headed up by his son Franklin, who is not the diplomat that his father was. Billy Graham recently met with Mitt Romney, and there's some disagreement as to whether or not he gave an endorsement, but there was a positive embrace of Mitt Romney to some extent. Shortly thereafter, Billy Graham's website has a list of cult groups, and Mormonism was removed from that, and then all this furor rose within evangelicalism as Billy Graham, this great evangelical leader and evangelist, somehow caved the truth for political expediency and all this type of thing. You need to keep in mind that for many evangelicals, they look at a certain list of essential doctrinal truths, and they find religious groups that they believe don't hold to those truths, and especially if they do so in the name of an expression of Christianity, the label that's applied, which they say they don't mean pejoratively, the label they use is cult. But as you know, as someone on the receiving end of that, it's not exactly a term that just warms and endears the heart. So what a movement of evangelicals, myself included, have been arguing for several years now and trying to use this recent flap with the Billy Graham Association to our advantage is to say now is the time to look at groups like Mormonism and to recognize that no matter how theologically nuanced you may use that term, that people find it offensive. And therefore, if we want to be winsome and positive and persuasive in our message of the gospel, why not remove unnecessary stumbling blocks like the use of these pejorative labels? And there are terms like minority religion or new religious movements. There are other terms that we could use that not only facilitate greater understanding, but facilitate relationships and even the better communication of the truths that evangelicals hold dear. So all that to say, the cult label is still out there. We're still wrestling with it within evangelicalism, but there are evangelicals who are making a concerted effort to move us beyond that, and that's a part of what the evangelical chapter of the FRD is trying to do.
Those are great points. I really appreciate that. A couple of things I think that it might be worth noting here. Speaking as a Latter-day Saint, I can say that the question as to whether or not Mormons are Christian is not a straightforward question. It's not easy to answer because it really does depend upon what you mean by Christian. And you saw Richard Land in the film be precise about the kind of Christianity he was talking about with regard to Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox Trinitarian Christianity, and Mormonism. And Richard Land is well known for identifying Mormonism as a fourth Abrahamic religion. So there was a lot of discussion a few years ago about an article in Time magazine in which Land is quoted as saying that Mormonism, though not necessarily Christian, is the fourth Abrahamic religion, with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's a very interesting place to be politically because on the one hand, he wants to show Mormons proper respect as a legitimate religious movement that falls within this broader Abrahamic tradition, while not wanting to use the word Christian to bring Mormonism within that family of denominations that he believes adheres to the Apostles' Creed, which he referred to. So this has been something that's been very interesting. The use of the word Christian, the use of the word cult, new religious movement, fourth Abrahamic religion. Mormonism doesn't fit neatly within any of them, which has been difficult for Romney, who is trying to walk this tightrope where he doesn't want to offend too many evangelicals, but he doesn't want to give up the essentials and integrity of his own faith. I think the clip from the debate was brilliant. I think that was a beautiful moment in capturing not just Romney wrestling with this, but Latter-day Saints wrestling with this as well.
Let me just piggyback very quickly on that. I found it interesting, that idea that if you apply a label like animal, that then there's this idea that I can get away with how I treat the other individual or the other religious group. I have an essay that I'm hoping we get published tomorrow at the website pathos.com, the Evangelical Channel, co-authored with Paul Metzger of Multnomah Biblical Seminary, and we wrote this with Halloween in mind, and it's looking at evangelical monstrosity. Not that we're monsters, but the monsters our religious subculture creates in the religious other. And we argue that what we do is not so much create vampires and zombies, but rather we take Mormons and Muslims and pagans and they become the monstrous religious other. And whether we recognize this consciously or not, that then gives us permission to apply further labels of unorthodox and heretics and all these things. And then from there it's a very short trip to denying you political freedoms and freedoms of speech and all these types of things. So I think that idea of labeling and connected to the idea of religious monstrosity is tremendously important, and it needs to be explored within our own religious communities. We create monsters out of you, and I have a feeling that maybe sometimes you create monsters out of evangelicals.
Any other questions?
Can I just slip one in on it? Hold on, I just got half asked this one. Lest the audience leave thinking that from that comment that you believe Mormonism is equivalent to evangelical Christianity in terms of God's mind and truth. Do you really think that Mormons need to change their ways to be saved? From an evangelical point of view, let's be FRD here. Let the other shoe drop.
Just so that I'm clear for you, as well as for my own religious community that's always wondering where has John Moorhead gone too far off the reservation. I have serious disagreements with many aspects of Mormonism. I don't believe in many aspects of it. I disagree. I don't think it's true. Obviously, I'm committed to an evangelical understanding of Christianity. I'm willing to argue and debate that in civil fashion. And I think that I certainly am not in the position of many evangelicals willing to jettison everyone who disagrees with me to hell. I'm not that judge. I'll let God take care of that, and he can work it out later on. In the meantime, we'll wrestle together through those issues. But I am very committed to my religious tradition, and I believe that just as you should be committed to yours. So the issue is not, do we disagree? It's the manner in which we go about that disagreement.